Thank you. As we just joked, we're moving away from the right edge constantly in the session. But a surprising amount of similarities between my talk and Nathaniel's song, actually. So this is curious. Anyway, but this is a low-level reconstruction. So this is a particular language or a collection of dialects within the Austronesian family. We now moved here to Taiwan. This is the Atayal, which has at least 7 dialects, but I'm going to be concentrating on 3. So we have 2 dialects here in Miaoli County, Matuwal and Matuao, and then another dialect here that's just away from the rest of the Atayal people chilling with the Sena. For now, you just, if you want to remember one thing, just remember that the Matu guys are hanging together, right? So Matuwal and Matuao are right next to each other. Okay, so the subgrouping, this was proposed by yours truly a couple of years ago. So this is the best subgrouping for Atayal because this is the only subgrouping for Atayal that we have. So now you see the Matu guys, they're actually from different branches of Atayal, and this Matuao is technically closer to Punala, but in reality, these 3 are all quite different from each other because Pengawan here and Matuwal are pretty divergent dialects with it. Okay, so when we talk about Proto Atayal vowels, the vowel system itself was very simple. Right? This is Austronesian. We have the Austronesian 4 vowel system: a, I, U, and schwa. But in Atayal, Proto Atayal, schwa was disallowed. On all Atayal dialects, schwa is disallowed in final syllables. And so for the final 2 syllables, the vowels are pretty much all the same throughout the Atayal dialects. There are a few like odd bits and pieces there, but they're all mostly explainable. Unfortunately, for outside the final foot, outside the final 2 syllables, there is weakening in pretty much all of Atayal. So that the rest of the dialects I'm not talking about, they just don't do vowels outside the final foot. And the Seda, which is closely related from Muslim language, also has weakening outside the final foot. So we have no direct evidence for vowels outside the final foot, except for these 3 guys, right? These dialects that still preserve vowel contrasts in these positions. And rather unfortunately, Atayal has a very low number of cognates with the rest of the family. Sometimes it seems that even less than 5. And this, at least the ones that we can identify with confidence. And there are reasons for that. So there is this lexical gender register thing that you can ask me about in the Q&A session. But we will sort of touch on that briefly. Okay. So apart from not having schwa in the final syllable ever, actually 2 of these 3 dialects that I'm focusing on today don't have schwa at all. So the historical schwa changes, it either gets deleted where possible in Pengawan, or it changes to something else, and it's not all the same segments. So usually it's a in Matuao, and this guy, it's across the board. It just merges completely into a. But in Pengawan, there are different things happening. So sometimes it copies the following vowel, but other times it's a. So it's I haven't figured that one out yet. So when we see a in all 3 dialects, it doesn't mean it's a. It could be from schwa. We don't know. All right, but not everything is a schwa. So it would be tempting, it would be easy to just say, this is all schwa. But unfortunately, there's lots of different correspondence, lots of things we're seeing. So I can't just put it all in the schwa bucket. So there are also, apart from the things that I just told you, there are synchronic phonological processes, or like other vowel weakening diachronic processes that happen in individual dialects. So one of these dialects has regular weakening of the 4th to last vowel, and one has weakening in the 2nd vowel from the left edge. But these are all regular things, so we can sort of, from different affixes of the forms, we can sort of find the underlying representation. We can see what the vowel should be. So that's not really a problem. It's just that you have to be aware. You'll see some places where there is no vowel here. What's going on? This is regular, unless I tell you otherwise. You have to trust me on that. So, what do we do if we see different vowels across these three dialects in the antepenultimate position? So, how do we reconstruct them? That is the question. That is the issue here. So, I'll let you see some of the data. So, this is the ideal situation. And so, yeah, you see we have, okay, U here in all three dialects. This is the Proto-Atayal lexeme with like additional lexical gender registers, affixation. So, but the vowel is U, and it should be U. This is related to bulan in Malay. E, right, in other places. Here, this Haponiak or Haponi is related to Sapoi in Proto-Atayal. Sapo is right. So we do expect an R here. This is great. And there's other corroborating evidence. But what do we do here? We see that sometimes we have A in Matu'aw and Pangawan, right? But we have something else in Matu'aw. We have E here, but we have U here. And other times it's Pangawan is the odd one out. So we have identical vowels in Matu'aw and Matu'aw, but there's something else going on. And it's not always the same correspondence, and there's different irregularity, sorry. Okay. How do I account for that? Well, you start with the obvious statement, external evidence, right? This is the first thing you should do, is try to look for evidence outside the group. So that's what I try to do. I try to find corroborating evidence elsewhere, and then use that evidence to try and account for cases where I don't actually have direct evidence from other languages. So there are a few reasons for these inconsistencies, right? And this sort of parallels Nathaniel's direct and indirect evidence approach. So some of the things are just like reanalysis of morphemes. So something that looks like an infix is reanalyzed as an infix, and that includes changing the vowel. There is also what I call the lability clone. I'll talk about that in a second. And schwa, of course. Schwa is a thing. So it's not that I'm not discounting changes of schwa. Okay, so I'll start with a simple one: pseudo infixation. So in a couple of these correspondences, we have what actually looks like infix or infix in. This is also what you would expect in infix because in Pangawan there is place assimilation of infixes. Okay, but and sometimes the other one out is Matu'al, and sometimes Pangawan. By the way, I forgot to mention that Matu'al is never the other one out in my data. So it's always either these two guys, Matu'al and Matu'al, are the same and Pangawan is different, or it's Matu'al and Pangawan are the same and Matu'al is different. That's just something to keep in mind. All right, so we'll start with this one, sound. Right, so Hanan, Hanayang, or Hinra. Right, the deletion here is regular. So in here, although it looks like it's an infix, it's actually part of the root, and we can tell it is part of the root because when we infix it with the in stays. So look first at this Matu'al forms, Humanan, right? We have Hanan, right, in Matu'al, which gets infixed with just becomes Humanan. So straight up inserting in there. And Hunaran is basically infixation, but preserving the end. So gets inserted, there's vowel deletion, and then there's assimilation of infix to the end vowel in the root. If you're not sure about that, that's okay. There's a lot of things going on. There's quite a few steps, so you can ask me about that in the Q&A session. So you'll have to trust me for now. But there is sometimes where an infix gets analyzed, it actually gets used as an infix. This is pretty interesting. So unruruch, which means long. I should have lost that. So we have it looks like the infix with place assimilation on the end to end. But if we suffix it with the PV right, so we get back ruruchun or shikaruruchun to elongate, and the nasal and the glottal stop to disappear. But if we compare the other two dialects, so we still have like elongate ka'anaruyuh or ka'anaruh here, even with the PV suffix un, baka'anaruh or baka'anruhun, the N is still here. It's preserved, and the vowel like is still A. So in matu'al and matu'al, like it's pretty obvious that the root has this syllable with A, and that's the N is part of the root. But in Bonon, it appears that it's actually become an infix. So it's interesting. Now, lability, when I talk about lability, I don't mean in like the syntactical sense. I mean like in a dictionary sense of it's like more prone to change. It's just a shorter word. It makes me look like I read books. So if we look at some external evidence for some of these correspondences, so if we look at Stedja, and luckily also there's great I have correspondences like straight from Proto-Astronesian for these two, for mortar and for 5. Of course, Lima, right, being a very common lexeme in Austronesian, which is irregular. It has this R vowel in Poltawan, but in 50 you have the same root, Lima or Marimal, where the E vowel is preserved. And for mortar, right, also this U vowel is expected. Now, Atayal has, again, lexical gender register, there's this extra stuff near the right edge, which makes it an antepenultimate vowel. And then there's this change of U to A in Panghawan. And we do have a couple of Sedek experts. So I'm not sure if Luduk would be considered like a cognate here. Maybe not. It's possible. And if it is, then again, it would serve as evidence for this U here in Rulio, as opposed to E in Panghawan. But maybe you can give me some pointers. Okay, and also like again, back to the lexical gender register. Sometimes we have forms without the lexical gender register affixation in other dialects. So we have in Proto Atayal, we have oh for banana, but then this il or ilu, as what I said yesterday, right? Could be just the whole infix in all these 3 dialects, but we still see an U vowel in Spoler, so we would expect an U vowel across the board in infix forms as well. But we instead will see A in Panghawan, so this appears to be the odd one out with additional evidence from other Atayal. And so I mark with a star those forms where we have evidence, outside evidence. So this is the one with where I have this Sedek form, and there appear to be other lexemes where I don't have evidence, but the correspondences are the same, right? So it's always one being the odd one out. And again, so these are mortar is the one with Proto-Astronesian reconstruction, and banana, that's the one we have a form in the different Atayal dialect without affixation. And smoke, okay, don't have external evidence for smoke, but it's U to A. Unfortunately, I can't find an conditioned environment. Part of the reason is because this is like literally all of the data. I don't have other stuff in there. So this is just too little data for me to draw conclusions from that. And this is why I just say that, it's okay, this sporadic changes because I can't tell for sure. Is this, because of some pharyngeals or glottals in the root? Maybe not. So we can just say that Banglawan seems to be more likely to undergo sporadic changes in that position, especially. And we can also see that within Banglawan, because there are like sub-dialects in the village. It comes from, it's originally two or three different villages that got conglomerated into one community, but they still preserve sub-dialectal distinctions. And we actually see different vowels in antepenultimate position for these varieties of Banglawan. You can ask me about that in the Q&A session. Finally, schwa. So there's a couple of things going on with schwa that are quite curious, and this is where I go into indirect evidence. So we see this vowel change. We see this correspondence. Let's look at the correspondence first. The correspondence is basically matawal I to A in Mato'al and Banglawan. So the grayed out things, this could be related. There's the G to glottal stop sometimes happens with the lexical register system, but the P is completely irregular, so maybe not. We'll just leave it out for now. But it's always E to A to A. So I'm saying that basically this comes from a schwa. Because this seems to be a regular correspondence happening before laryngeals, right? We only see it. It's a glottal stop and pharyngeal H. I'm just using laryngeals as like an umbrella term for this one. So it's always like followed by an H or a glottal stop, right? This is always one of these guys after it. So this seems to be phonologically conditioned. And normally we expect schwa to become A in Matawal. We see a lot of examples, especially in like alternating verbs where schwa becomes A. So there you go. And we do actually have examples where there's, in like a CC cluster, there's an H there, or even an H in the syllable, like with other stuff in between, that still has this E to A to A. Let's skip that last one. The most interesting to me, at least, part of this presentation is the even more indirect evidence from Banglawan. So, if you look at these are all my reconstructions for Proto Atayal for my dissertation. And I was really unsure about some of the vowels, right, because they're irregularities. But I pulled them up. And so we have E plus glottal stop, or R plus glottal stop sometimes, or A and Q in Mato'al. We have A across the board in Mato'al, and we have just one A in Banglawan. Now, assuming that we already know that that's E in front of the glottal stop, like this correspondence is a schwa, right? We're all on board with that, right? Okay. So now we can then look at the other correspondences where we have A in Mato'al and just a single A in Banglawan, and sort of try to basically Banglawan here is the evidence. The deletion or the merger of this A in Mato'al corresponding to just a single syllable A in Banglawan. Because Banglawan doesn't delete, doesn't merge all instances of A. There are words like Ga'arus or Ba'ashun. It is a legal sequence in the dialect. So I'm saying that it points to a schwa. One of the reasons why this is a schwa is because, we do have a couple of words where, we see this evidence from Mato'al. But the other reason is synchronic deletion in Banglawan itself. So this Banglawan actually has this deletion process where if we have a schwa plus followed by a glottal stop, the schwa is in the anti is in a penultimate syllable, right? It's still preserved. The glottal stop is preserved. But if as soon as it's the root is suffix and it becomes an antepenultimate schwa followed by a glottal stop, there's a deletion of both the vowel and the glottal stop, right? So just the whole thing. the syllable is deleted. And this happens even in glottal stops that come from Q, which normally don't get deleted in Bangla. So this is like really interesting, and we also saw that in that big table I had data where the vowel was followed by a Q, and again this just merges into a single vowel in Bangla. Whereas if you look at Madhuwal, you would have mas an versus ksa amun, that's its preservation of the vowel, and this is like a regular reflex of a schwa that we would expect in Madhuwal for this position. And again, of course, Q is preserved in the style, so no deletions to go. So basically, to recap, we have a schwa becoming an E in this position, followed by an H or a glottal stop in antepenultimate. We have deletion in Bangla, so there's like a complete different change in a completely different dialect, but there is an overlap in a couple of words. And very interesting in Bangla, this happens with historical cues as well. And some sporadic changes in pseudo-affixation in both Madhuwal and Bangla, and just random changes in Bangla. So this is great. I think this is nice because basically I reconstruct with this. I can account for almost all of the vowels I couldn't reconstruct previously. Unfortunately, with Bangla, I may not be able to identify a reason for these changes. And that's it. Thank you.